The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Gala webinar series. My name is Manuela Noske, and I'm the Communications Manager at Gala. Gala is a global nonprofit trade association that enables communication and business across languages and cultures. We're headquartered in Seattle, Washington, in the United States. And today we're going to have a presentation by Paul Doherty from Strategy Management Consultants. And he will talk to us about customer care in the localization industry. I'm going to kick this off in just a moment, but before I do that, I need to go over our housekeeping rules. First of all, everyone's lines are muted to cut down on any noise. If you have any technical difficulties, let me know by using your chat box, and I will work with you to troubleshoot them. If you have a slow internet connection, your audio may be disrupted. If that happens, use the number listed on the GoToWebinar panel to call in using your own phone. We are making a recording of this presentation, and you will be able to find it following the presentation on Gala's global website. We typically publish these in the afternoon, and you will receive a link when the recording is published. If you have any questions or any comments, please type them into your chat box. We will get to as many questions as we can with the time that remains after the presentation. And lastly, I want to remind everybody that registration for the Gala 2020 conference in San Diego is now open, and that early bird rates apply until January 31st. So if you're planning to attend, now would be the time to register to get the best rate. Next, let me introduce our speaker. During his career, Paul Doherty has set up 2 language services companies, the Language Technology Center, which became a 25 million business merged into Xerox Language Service, and Multilingual Technology Limited, which he sold to Berlitz during the .com era. Since then, Paul has been managing director of UK, German, Polish, and Slovakian companies for Berlitz, Baun, and Linebridge. He has led European sales for Linebridge and SDL and has worked as a strategic consultant to Moravia. Paul is a director at Strategy Management Consultants Limited, helping companies to implement transformative change. And that's what he will talk to us about today. So without any further ado, Paul, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Manuela. Thanks for the introduction, and hello to everyone on the call. The customer speaks, but are you listening? So in this webinar, I'm going to argue that there's a chronic lack of customer care in the localization industry. This problem can be looked at in isolation. For example, your customers are talking, but you're not listening. Or it can be seen in a wider context of company culture and how it relates to how we treat our customers. Looked at in this wider context, we can see the benefits of using customer feedback as input to continual improvement, devolving decision-making to process practitioners, and even as input to company strategy. However, most companies look at customer care in isolation, almost as an afterthought. So why do most companies only pay lip service to listening to their customers? Why do many executives have no idea about what their customers think of their company? And why does a lost customer nearly always come as a surprise? Now, I attend a lot of conferences, and what I notice is that LSPs are continually trying to differentiate themselves by searching for a technology USP, be it AI or MT, data-driven decision-making, or the best language platform. These ambitions, though worthy of investment, are expensive. They have a long roadmap, and the benefits are not always immediately obvious to the customer. On the other hand, listening to what your customers say, using the voice of the customer as input to continual improvement, and requiring your whole organization to get involved in the process improvement will deliver results more quickly for less money, and which are immediately visible to your customers. Your USP will be, we are different because of the way we treat you, because of the way we listen to you, because of the way we care about you. So LSPs are often looking for the latest technology development to give them an edge over the competition or to make them stand out from the crowd, all in the constant pursuit of better, faster, cheaper, do more for less, and eliminate waste. But the biggest form of waste is a lost customer. Most LSPs get 50% of their revenue or more from their top 10 customers. And yet most service companies leave the future relationship with their precious customers to chance. By that I mean they gamble that they know enough about how satisfied their customers are to feel secure about their continued relationship with their customers. They have to gamble because they have no system in place to deliver reliable information. And by system, I mean three things: people, process, and technology to provide real-time information you can act upon. So as we all learned, in Alien, in space, no one can hear you scream. And in most companies, no one can hear the customer scream. They're suffering, you just can't hear them. So this is the ideal situation. You keep your customers in close orbit, you have good communication and visibility, and most companies believe this is where they have their customers. And why not? The customers are still spending money with you, the margins are good, and you haven't heard anything negative, so no news is good news. But the reality is often very different. There's a discrepancy between your view and the customer view of the account position. From your viewpoint, the customer is still in close orbit and satisfied, but unknown to you, there were a number of moments of truth when an expectation was not met, or a promise was not kept, or an opportunity was missed. As a result, you might be about to lose your customer. So moving from alien to gravity, it's important that you don't let go of your customer. And you have to have a way of identifying these moments of truth, these key decision points, to act quickly and to not let your customer go before your customers have drifted too far off and into the orbit of a competitive company. So why do you have to listen to your customers? Because customers are hard to win and easy to lose. Why is it then that most companies don't know what their customers are thinking? Why is company culture so much tilted in favor of winning new customers more than retaining existing customers? If you have a long-standing relationship with an existing customer, you've had to be doing a lot of things right. But are these things enough to retain your customer in the future? And how do you know you're still doing right by your customer? So this is where most companies get it right. Most companies spend a lot of money on sales and marketing. They track leads, prospects, and deals to contract win. They use technology like Salesforce.com or other CRMs to speed up the sales process and improve performance. They have legal teams check the contract and financial teams to check predicted margins. But where most companies get it wrong is they then hand over new customers to operations teams with little commercial experience. The operations teams are very busy. And in fact, they're so busy doing work in progress, they can't be expected to expand existing accounts. They're often incapable of recognizing threats and opportunities. They don't always respond professionally to complaints, and they often don't share best practices. And most importantly, they have no technology for doing any of these things. So the result is customer frustration. Their new and future requirements are not being met. The competitors are introduced to your account, and you lose revenue and you lose customers. So how do you lose customers? Very slowly, then very suddenly. This is similar to how you lose your wife, actually. All those Saturday nights in front of the TV, drinking beer and ignoring her completely, and then she leaves you. Who could have seen that coming? Very slowly, then very suddenly. Or how you lose your health, years and years of eating the wrong food, drinking too much and not doing enough exercise, and then you get high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes. Who could have seen that coming? Actually, your doctor did, and he kept telling you. Very slowly, then very suddenly. So why does bad news nearly always come as a surprise? Especially at the top of the organization, Why does the executive team only seem to take an active interest in customers when they are on the way out, when it is often too late to do anything about it? I believe we're all the sum of our personal habits. Who I am and who you are is the sum of our habits, the things we do on a daily basis. And lost customers are the result of our corporate habits and culture, the things organizations do on a daily basis. So lost customers, a system fault or a human error. Well, we all love to blame someone. It's a very human trait, but it's rarely human error that causes a lost customer. In most cases, failure is an event, not a person. So I'd like you to ask yourself this question. What is the typical response to a lost customer in your company? It's a good question to ask because it's an excellent indicator of your company culture. So one response might be, there's a hunt for a scapegoat. You have to find someone to blame. Is there a public execution? Do they bring up the bodies? Or, on the other hand, is bad news hushed up and glossed over, like it never happened? Is a lost customer airbrushed from history? Just like some cultures think it's disrespectful to talk of the dead, some companies are very reluctant to talk about lost customers or to ask why the loss occurred. An alternative reaction might be, there's an honest attempt to learn from the loss, to look at where the system failed, to rectify the errors, and to improve the system. So I wonder how your company reacts to lost customers. So customer feedback is a gift. It's also the title of an excellent book. So customer feedback is a gift because it's a lifeline to your customers. They're not ex-customers yet. They still want to do business. They're telling you what to do and they're giving you an opportunity to improve. And complaints are your biggest opportunity to improve. They define what your customers want. Well-handled complaints improve loyalty. Badly handled complaints lead to customer attrition. So, and responsive companies create opportunities for customers to complain. This slide describes the typical cycle, the typical negative cycle of complaints that customers experience. So it starts and begins, so begins and ends with the dissatisfied customers. Customers realizing that complaining is useless. They've tried complaining, you don't react properly, you don't answer, they're not satisfied. So they stop complaining and you lose the opportunity to learn and improve. And therefore your product and service quality stagnate, leading to more dissatisfaction. And this dissatisfaction leads to a price war to stay competitive. Now, I wonder how many of you get as frustrated as I do when I hear someone say, now this customer's only interested in price. It's all about price. They're only interested in price. Well, it's never just about price unless that's the only option you leave your customer with. You don't listen to them. You don't respond. You've let your service offering stagnate and you take your customer for granted. What else have you left the customer to focus on apart from price? So staff get demotivated dealing with difficult customers. I've always made a point of visiting so-called difficult customers, and I'm always amazed at their patience, at their loyalty, that they've put up with so much for so long. So they're not difficult customers. Difficult customers are not those who complain. Difficult customers are those who have stopped complaining because complaining is useless. They're difficult because they're going to walk and you won't be able to do anything about it. So good staff leave and those left are less able to handle complaints. And as a result of that, more customers leave and your reputation tanks. And those dissatisfied customers become bad will ambassadors. So that negative cycle of complaints is money down the drain. And the biggest form of waste is a lost customer, and the biggest amount of money down the drain is a lost customer. So you need to make a promise to your customers that when they speak you'll listen, but in order to deliver on that promise, you need a system. The system, as I said earlier, is people, process, and technology. Without the right people or trained people, the system fails. Without the right process, the system fails. And without the right technology, the process is too cumbersome and costly, and the system fails. So who should listen to feedback? Well, everybody in the company. But it's normally project managers, salespeople, and the people in the front line get the customer feedback. But they often don't know what to do with it. Should they escalate it? Should they deal with it themselves? Should they ignore it and hope it goes away? If they escalate it to their manager, will she or he do anything with it? Are they interested? Do they understand? Or will they sit on it? I think it's pure luck if the customer feedback gets anywhere near the leadership team, and it's luck if the leadership team is interested in hearing the feedback. So all customer interactions are an opportunity to gather feedback as input to process improvement, or as confirmation that your systems and processes are delivering the results the customer wants. So examples of interactions with customers, quarterly business reviews, post-project reviews, any formal or informal meeting with your customer is an opportunity to gather input. So you have to make your company open to feedback. And then I've highlighted 5 things that needs to happen, starting with securing executive commitment. So I have to say, from years of dealing with executive teams, that is the hardest nut to crack. Getting executive commitment is difficult. But without executive support, you're wasting your time. Whatever you do will not work, and you'll get no recognition for your efforts. So executive commitment is more than warm words. By commitment, I mean action, an action in the form of continual communication with the company, participation in the planning, implementation, and tracking the customer care system, putting customer care high on their executive meeting agendas, and using the system results as input to company strategy, continual improvement, and cultural change. But once you've got your executive commitment, what you'll need to do is come up with your customer care vision as part of your strategy, define the current state and how you plan to get to the desired future state as part of your strategy. You'll have to agree a team to implement it and to audit it, and you have to agree what you're going to track. And what you'll track is complaints, compliments, fixes, and suggestions, all as input to process improvement and continual learning. You'll also track from your customer meetings and interactions, opportunities and threats, share best practices, and you'll also take part in formal customer satisfaction surveys. So the technology scope is quite simple. I implemented such a system in my own company 20 years ago. It was a small company, 45 employees. We had one office. I had an open door policy. And I still wasn't hearing about customer issues until it was too late to do anything about it. I mean, you've got your own company and it's a small company, a lost customer can be the difference between staying in business and going out of business. So when I looked into why we were losing customers, I discovered that people were scared of getting into trouble, that they would be blamed for bad news, or that they thought they could handle the complaint themselves without getting help, or they made a value judgment on the complaint, such as, oh, that guy's always complaining, or he doesn't understand the process. So I decided to do something about it, and that decision was I would always be among the first to hear bad news. And for that, I needed some technology. I needed a database that was anyone could enter on the database that would generate an email to a distribution list, a customizable distribution list, and I was on that list. I would hear about bad news right away. And I said to them, you'll be, whatever you've done, if you enter the complaint on the database, you'll be forgiven. If you don't, you won't be forgiven. But whatever you've done, just enter the data, enter the complaint. And it worked remarkably well. I mean, it evolved from just complaints tracking, compliments, suggestion schemes. It developed into a total quality management system. So, but the point of telling this story is really to say, you know, if a small UK company with limited resources could do this 20 years ago, I'm sure all the companies on this call can do it now. So system development, you have to have a development schedule, do a pilot test, and then roll out with your top 10 customers initially. Why top 10 customers? Because they're usually 50% or more of your revenue. And then you need a training plan. You have to train all the customer-facing staff, and then maybe even the backroom staff, but initially your customer-facing staff. So just like to finish with a what-if slide. I mean, just imagine a world where every LSP had a system for customer care. You know, what would happen if every localization company took customer care into their own hands instead of leaving it to chance? Would great customer service lose its value as a USP if everybody had a system which delivered great customer care? Well, before I answer that question, I have to say it's unlikely to happen, because even though everybody wants the results and the benefits, not many companies are willing to put in the hard work to achieve the results. And hard work means doing simple things consistently over the medium to long term. And that level of consistency is hard to do, but it delivers consistent results. Consistent action delivers consistent results. But this is a what if slide. So what if every LSP had a system for customer care? I believe it would raise the standard of everybody's game in the localization industry, and it would raise the profile of the localization industry itself. Excellence breeds excellence, and wherever you get a concentration of excellence, you get world leaders like automotive manufacturers in Germany and Japan, or big tech in Silicon Valley. Wherever you get a concentration of excellence, it improves everyone's performance, and the winners are, of course, your customers. So that's my presentation, and I'll hand back to Manuela for the questions and answers.
Thank you, Paul. I think the most important question is how do you, to the audience, floor is open, type them into the question box. But let's start with this one here. How do you get the executive team to be interested in this and motivated and supported? What really is in it for them in the long run?
Well, you know, I always think it's the question I would ask is, why is the executive team not already interested and motivated and supportive? Why are so many executive teams not customer focused? And I've thought about that for a long time. I mean, obviously some executives are extremely customer focused and love to meet customers, but many just aren't. For instance, you can ask yourself, people on the call here, how often does the executive team ever meet any of your customers? How difficult is it to get them to go to a customer meeting? Have they ever met your top 10 customers, your top 20? Many think it's not their job to get involved with individual customers, that customer feedback is a detail, and other people can do that because they're working on the big picture. You know, the Japanese Lean Six Sigma always encourage managers to work the shop floor to get their hands dirty. But at the executive level, there's a resistance to doing that. Many of them are just internally focused. It's a mystery why it's so difficult, but it is difficult to do it. So how do you get them interested and supportive? Well, you've got to press their pain points as well. Losing customers isn't fun, even for executives who don't like meeting customers. And so therefore, instead of, you know, finding the guy to blame, you know, or trying to hush it up and cover over, you can say, do you want to avoid this happening again? If so, you know, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make sure that we don't lose our customers? And then you get them involved in that discussion. And of course, if you've already done your homework, you will lead them down the path to a system like I've just described here. So I suppose the way to get the executive team interested is to get them to feel the pain.
Mm-hmm. And not just the financial pain, but let them in on what really is going on.
Let them, get them. I find that most executives, most CEOs, apart from the ones who willingly come out, most of them will come if you prod them hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to get them to do that. If you've got the CEO on your side, the rest will fall in line normally.
Yeah.
And once you get them, this is the thing, although executives don't like meeting customers, once you get them in front of the customer, most of them are great. You know,
I bet.
most of them perform wonderfully in front of the customer. So you've got to get them out there.
Yeah. So our Gala audience, I mean, we have really quite a diverse audience, right? We have client companies, we have LSPs, we have language technology companies, but looking only at the LSP segment, we have some very large companies that are members, but also middle-sized and smaller ones. So the system that you're describing here, this customer care system, is that for all sizes of customers? Or when do you think it's really worthwhile implementing?
Well, I think the principle of listening to your customers is for all companies. If you're not listening to your customer, you know, how are you going to stay in business? So I'm assuming that everybody's interested in getting customer feedback. They would all love to know what their customers really think about them. So the question is, do you need an ad hoc system for that? You know, go and talk to them and send me an email, or go and talk to them and come back and have a meeting and tell me what they said? Or do you want a system for that? And I think the answer is yes, you need a system, people, process, and technology to do that properly. And as I mentioned on the presentation, I had a small company myself, you know, 20 years ago, and it was important enough for me as a small business owner to do it. And I didn't know how to do it at first. Somebody actually, I was terribly frustrated, and I met a former director of Xerox in Waitrose, which is a supermarket in the UK, and I told that he was retired, and I told him what was going on. He said, "Oh, you should read this book by Julian Richer, The Richer Way," and Julian Richer has, I still think he has a company called Richer Sounds. It was a retail hi-fi shop, and the ideas that I actually implemented are how to get customer feedback, how to get suggestions for improvement, what I got initially from that book, and I was just determined to implement it because I couldn't afford to lose customers. So I imagine for small companies it's important. For medium-sized companies, I sold my company to Berlitz, and Berlitz at the time was like a franchise. They thought, oh, I said, you should be doing this for all the Berlitz companies, and they weren't really interested. They said, carry on, Paul, do what you're doing, which I did, you know. So they left me to my own devices, and I developed the system. Bowen bought Berlitz, and Bowen were interested in it, but they thought they had bigger fish to fry. And by the time they got around to looking at it, Bowen had been acquired by Lionbridge. And Lionbridge, to my great delight, decided to roll it out. And they did that in pretty short order because there was executive support for that. And I haven't been with Lionbridge for 9 years, something like that. So I don't know where it's at now, but when I was there, it was a superb system. So there you've got from small company all the way through medium size up to a large company like Lionbridge. I think it's for all sizes of companies.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, how much does it cost?
Well, I couldn't put a figure on it, but I say it's less than people think. I mean, the technology is minimal. You need some developer help to develop the front end to the database. The people are already there, so it's not an additional cost. You just need to retrain them, and some people need to be reassigned to help implement the team, and some people need to be reassigned to audit the process. But the most difficult one is the cultural change, because I mentioned on my presentation a number of times habits, and habits are hard to change. Not so much for new staff. New staff come in, you say, here's our process, this is the way we do business around here, and new recruits just go, great, that's the way we do it. But people who have been in business longer, it's difficult to adopt simple things on a daily basis consistently over the medium to long term. That's difficult, but it can be done, and the results are consistent and consistently good.
So, we got a question here. If a C-level team is really so uninvolved, have you ever heard them give any reasons for why they're not listening to customers, or is this just not talked about?
Well, I think I mentioned earlier that many at the C-level, they think we're very busy, we've got people, you're in sales, you talk to the customers, that's what I hired you for, you talk to them. Why do I need to get involved? So you get a lot of that they think, they're big picture people, and they've hired people to look after the detail. And so that's one thing you'll come up against quite a lot.
Yeah.
But you've got to get them out of that complacency, though. And a lost customer is a great event to get them to get their attention, because that event says that event says there's a problem, and the existing process has delivered this problem. So if you want to avoid this kind of problem in the future, let's look at the process and how we can improve it.
So it's a complacency. There's no bad intent. It's just really complacency.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Some executives are actually quite shy people, and they don't, they have this feeling that they don't like to be in front of the customer. But I've never had an executive who hasn't performed well in front of customers, even quiet ones. They listen well, and they come out of it and they said, here's what I heard, and they give good input. So it's key to get them there.
Yeah. Going back to a customer care system, and we just talked about how much it costs to implement it. How long does it actually take to have such a system in place and working well?
Well, without executive support, it takes forever.
Yeah.
But assuming you get that, so the little story I told about from my company through Berlitz, and that looked at that perspective. I was kind of like the voice in the wilderness for years, pushing this until Linebridge decided to do it, and then things moved very, very quickly. So if you look at the actual systems development, and the training of the staff and the communication, all that can be done, 6 to 9 months. The rollout of the system can be done within 12 to 15 months. So all in about just over a year, but that's getting it up and running in a large company, right? In Linebridge, it was 35 plus countries. Smaller companies, it will be considerably shorter, but that's just the start. It's a continual process. It's a long-term commitment for long-term results. So the initial getting it up and running is just phase one.
So it could be relatively fast as long as you've got the commitment.
If you've got the executive commitment, things move very quickly indeed.
What do you think about customer satisfaction surveys? Are those a good idea at all? Do you have any experience with those? What's your take?
Well, I think any instrument that allows you to get customer feedback is a good idea. A lot of companies do it. They don't always do it very well. They send out surveys, and I always thought customer satisfaction surveys was a great excuse to go and meet your customer. They're more likely to fill it in if you're at a meeting when they do it, and you're more likely to get honest feedback as well. So customer satisfaction surveys are one tool in the toolbox. So yeah, I think they're a good idea.
Mm-hmm. And isn't tracking complaints, isn't that just an operations or sales issue?
Well, as I mentioned in the presentation, normally salespeople and PMs are the first people to actually get complaints because they're in the front line. So they're the best people to collect the information, but they're not always the best people to come up with a solution. And this isn't just about complaints, it's also opportunities. I mean, sometimes customers ask for help or say, could you do this, could you do that? And the person talking to the customer says, well, no, we can't do that. And honestly, they think they can't. They're not aware that there's another team in the very same in their company that solved that problem for another customer, but they're not aware of it because there's no system for sharing that kind of information. So although sales and ops are the best place to collect information, they're not always the best people to come up with a solution, and they're not always the people who have the most relevant knowledge about how others have solved similar problems, and they're certainly not the only people who should know.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah. Which brings us to the next question. What kind of training do people need to do this well?
Well, they need training in the system, how to use the system, which should be simple. You should be able to access the system from your iPhone or iPad or your laptop or desktop. I think there's there's all sorts of training. I would start off with there's training called Thinking Like a Customer. You can do training about complaints. I mentioned that book, a complaint is a gift. There's training on root cause analysis, corrective action, preventative action, continual improvement. So there's several levels of training to help people understand why you're doing it, and then there's training to help them understand how to use the system, and then you need auditors to be trained how to audit the system that it's been used properly.
Mm-hmm. Who needs to be involved in this? So everybody in the company, or is it relegated to just a few? Who needs to be played?
Right, from the top, you need the executive commitment. You need whoever's running IT to be committed to the technology development and support. Finance have to be involved to assign budgets and track the results from the system. Operations need to be involved in changing their processes. So if the process is causing the complaints, they need to develop and improve their process. Sales need to be involved in how to capture the voice of the customer properly. And HR need to be involved in training and support. Mm-hmm. So yeah, basically the whole company.
The whole company, yeah. So, there's sort of a different view, and that is most LSPs are just trying to make their margins, right? They're desperately trying to find the resources to do the actual work. They're pushing files back and forth. Isn't this a luxury? And is this really realistic for our industry?
I don't think it's a luxury. Mm-hmm. I understand the pain that small businesses feel, trying to do things with little resources, but at some point, and I was a small business owner, the pain of losing business, of not finding out, of not being able to satisfy your customer. You spend so much time winning a customer, to lose it, it's a painful mm-hmm. event. And if that doesn't motivate you to look at, doing something different, I'm not sure what would, but sometimes you've got to say, well, I know we're all busy running around, putting out fires, whack-a-mole. We love, whack-a-mole, you hammer the head of the mole as it pops up. We love doing that. Some people love firefighting, but sometimes it's a good idea to say, hey, what if we could prevent the fires in the first place? So I don't think it's a luxury. I think it's a necessity.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and if you do it, you're going to. There's a cost of conformance and the cost of non-conformance. The cost of conformance is there. It costs money to do this. It takes time to do it consistently, but the benefits are there. And there's a cost of non-conformance. You carry on as before, keep on losing customers, maybe go out of business.
Mm-hmm. So let's assume I'm listening in, I'm a CEO of a small company, what's my first step?
Well, the first step is to acknowledge you've got a problem. If you've got a problem, it means some companies might not have a problem. They're lucky.
They may not know that they have a problem, right?
They don't know that. There's lots of examples I know, and maybe people on this call know, where you're coming up to, it's budget time, they're adding in, the things are going well. I mentioned, the customer's still spending money with us. The margins are still good. Stick on another 10, 15% growth for next year. But they don't know that they're about to lose that customer. I've seen that numerous times. I've experienced it myself. So
what do they do? How do they start?
Yeah, so that they have to start by acknowledging they've got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, everything else flows. If you've got a problem and you're interested in solving that problem, in avoiding the negative consequences of your poor processes, then you acknowledge that, and there's things that can be done about it. But it's really kind of that look in the mirror time, saying, hey, I can't afford to carry on like this. It's time we changed the way we do business around here.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you, Paul. I think that is all the question that we had today. So thank you very much for your time making us aware of this, that this is even an issue in our industry, and laying out, possible ways of approaching.
It was my pleasure.
Yep. Thank you.
Hopefully.
Thank you for all the great questions. And, just another thank you to the audience for calling in today. And a reminder that we would really appreciate it if you could take just a moment to give us your feedback on the session using the post-event survey that will pop up right after I close. It is short, but as always, your perspectives really help us to continue to refine our webinar program. And with that, I wish you a good day and you a good evening where you are, Paul. And I look forward to seeing you all at another Gala webinar soon. Bye-bye.